Why can't you stop drinking? So there's a quick answer and there's a long answer. I'll give you the quick: denial. But the long answer, so I think everyone goes through it. I've talked before about conscious and unconscious denial. But there's also elements of conditioning. This goes back to some of the things I used to say in my very early videos. We have a preconception or a misconception about what an alcoholic is. And furthermore to that, we have even less knowledge, less conceived ideas about what it is to be an alcoholic in recovery. So firstly, we don't know what an alcoholic is. It's impossible for us to conceive that we would be one. And secondly, we don't know what it is or what it means to be an alcoholic who has stopped. So if you don't know what the problem is and you don't know what the solution is, how are you going to define it and how are you going to become it? I was thinking the other day about that last thing that we all hold on to. You know, in my journey of recovery, I started off, I was not an alcoholic. I was just someone who'd got into a bad cycle, a self-reciprocating or whatever it is, that thing, spiral of drinking. Starts with the regular drinking, moves on to the everyday drinking, gets to that critical, or for me, got to the critical point of morning drinking, hair of the dog. Then the physical dependence. And it was the physical dependence which broke down the first barriers of denial. It was that, okay, I think I know what an alcoholic is because I remember my uncle and his drinking and his behaviour. And I know the way the media portrays alcoholics. I've seen them in films. I've heard stories about them. I know the stupid, the completely misleading ideas of addiction that we get through Hollywood and TV drama. I know all of that stuff because I've seen it. And that's not what I look like. So I'm not an alcoholic. But I have started drinking a bit too much, and I have noticed I've got a problem with alcohol. But that doesn't make me an alcoholic. That doesn't mean I need to stop. That means doesn't mean my problem's so bad that I've got to stop drinking. So if in my mind I don't think I have to stop, then I'm not going to. And it's a little bit of that idea, the tiniest bit of that idea that stays with you, that stops you stopping. Because that's the hope, isn't it? The hope is that all these other things that I've noticed, they're just little problems I need to fix. They're not things that make me an alcoholic. They're things that have meant I've got into this bad cycle, that the bad things keep on happening, that life's not going my way, that I'm depressed, I'm tired, I'm pulling sickies at work, I'm having arguments, I feel shit, I've got no motivation, I've got no drive, I hate the world, I hate everything, I just want things to be different. But it's not that I'm an alcoholic. It's not that my problem is so bad that I've got to stop. So if you're asking yourself, why can't I stop drinking even though I need to stop? It's because there's elements of that denial in there that are saying that you don't really need to stop. That's underneath stuff. That's the subconscious stuff. The more conscious stuff is like, I need a drink to get through the day. I enjoy going out and having a drink and getting merry, getting leery, losing your inhibitions, going on crazy mad nights, having a blowout, all that stuff. You know all that stuff. You know you love doing all that stuff. And you don't really want to get rid of that stuff. You'd like to be able to stop drinking enough that that bad stuff stops happening, but you still get to enjoy the good stuff. But the further you go down the trail, the further you lose yourself, the more you realise that there's more bad stuff and the good stuff isn't really happening anymore. It's a pipe dream. And admitting that you've lost all the good stuff, and that although you like all that stuff, it's not worth it to keep drinking if all the bad stuff keeps happening. Admitting that is another level. So I'm trying to figure out what stopped me. What was the last thing that stopped me? Because I had problems staying stopped. But what was the last thing that stopped me drinking? Stop drinking. I think it was wanting one last blowout. It was facing one last situation that I went, this is too much. I've got to have that release again. Because here we come on to the next bit. You don't know what it's like to be sober. If you keep flip-flopping from short-term sobriety to relapses or whatever you want to call it, episodes, slipping back in, experimenting with alcohol in different ways, trying new things. If you keep on going back and forth, then you don't have this was the bad stuff versus this is the good stuff of sobriety. If you don't have that, if you haven't experienced that, then you in for a decent period of time, then you don't know what you're aiming for. You don't realize that you're going to be happier overall, that you can deal with the bad things that happen, that you can build healthy relationships, that you can build up your self-worth, that you can be proud of who you are. Because all that stuff, all the good stuff, then outweighs the pipe dreams. And then you go, actually, I want to keep this good stuff. I don't need a blowout, because the blowout leads to the bad stuff. The good stuff maintains me. The good stuff is what I then have and what I live for. So why can't you stop? You didn't know what an alcoholic was, so you didn't want to call yourself an alcoholic. You also didn't know what it was to be a recovering or recovered, whatever you want to call it, alcoholic. So you didn't know what it was to stop. You didn't know what positives you would get from it. So the only concepts, the only way you could balance out the pros and the cons was based on a life of drinking. You were still thinking that the only good things that came in life were those moments of release and the blowouts and the mad ones. Those were the good things. So without giving yourself a real chance, without struggling through some of that pain of having to attain the good stuff, you won't know. And that stuff doesn't come straight away. You've got to work for that. There's some pink cloud stuff. When you first stop drinking, you're like, oh, great, got energy, I can sleep better, all that kind of stuff. That comes quickly. But the long-term benefits, the long-term joy, that takes effort, time, determination. So you need the last bits of hope that you would enjoy the good drinking stuff. Needs to be smashed. And then you've got to be prepared to put in some slog, some graft, go through some pain to experience the good, the yin and the yang. You got to say, I'm prepared to go through some tough times to finally get the real good times. You got to say, I'm going to listen to what that fella said on YouTube. Not just me, anyone else who does sobriety stuff. Anyone in your sobriety circles when you find them. And you've got to trust that when they say it's worth it, it's worth it. You've got to say, I want that. So just stop for a minute and think, am I holding on to old ideas? Am I holding on to pipe dreams? Do I really think that only good I'm capable of achieving is a blowout? Are you prepared to put that behind you? And if you are, go for it. If you're having a hard time, talk to someone. Watch another one of these videos or someone else's videos about long-term recovery. I know that you're going for something better. You've got to cut that last thread that you were holding on to. Accept that old life of drinking is no more. It's not for you. It only brings bad. Get yourself a new target. That came out some like very weird motivational speech. I didn't expect that when I started this or was thinking about it this morning. Wish you all the best. Bye.